This part was started with the sketch of various lines and arcs. A 10mm line follows 90 degrees into a 30mm and then a 40mm line to form the outer face. The inner face is formed by a line tangent to the arc. We wanted the back face to be 5mm thick, so we dimensioned the inner face 25mm from the datum. This part was extruded 30mm. Next, we evenly spaced holes 10mm from each other and the top of the part, and then tapped them to fit M4 screws. To create the connection between the head connector and the arm, we started by sketching a cylinder 20mm in diameter, centered on the inner bottom face, then offset slightly inwards by 5mm. This sketch was extruded up to the bottommost face and 10mm upwards. We wanted all of our joint connections to fit M6 bolts, so a 6mm hole was sketched on the top face of the cylinder and cut through the part. To fit the other connector in a spring, a hole 10mm in diameter was cut 8mm into the part. Finally, to create the teeth, 2mm were cut off the outside of the cylinder radially, 5mm deep. A plane was created tangent to the outer face of the cylinder at an 11.5 degree offset from the right plane. This was so that when the teeth were created, the teeth would be offset from each other with respect to the other parts. That way the parts could line up straight when the teeth were meshed together. Teeth 4mm wide and 3mm deep were then cut into the surface of the part, up to the second surface here. A single tooth was used to start, then a circular pattern was used to create the others, 16 in total, spaced evenly 360 degrees around the cylinder. Finally, an extra extrusion was used to clean up the part before printing. This part was started with a circle 20mm in diameter, extruded into a cylinder 25mm tall. Next, to create the mate between the joint to headband part, a cylindrical section was cut out between 10 and 16mm, offset 2mm from the top face of the part. To fit the bolt, a 6mm hole was cut through the center of the part as well. To create the teeth on this part, a plane was created tangent to the cylinder and made parallel to the right plane, as opposed to offset as in the previous part. A tooth slot of the same previous dimensions was cut up to the inner face of the cylinder, and once again, a circular pattern was used to create 16 individual teeth. The extending arm was started with a plane tangent to the cylinder and parallel to the right plane. A rectangle 15mm long and 10mm wide was extruded up to the surface of the cylinder, then extruded 10mm in the other direction. The second part of the head joint was created with a circle sketched 20mm in diameter, tangent to the midpoint of the new protrusion, extruded 20mm to the left. The protrusion was extended up to the surface of the second cylinder, and the same previous steps were repeated to create the hole for the bolt, the slot for the mating, and the teeth. This time, the first tooth was made parallel to the top surface of the part. Finally, fillets were added to strengthen the part. Please note that while this is the entire part, we split this part into two separate parts for printing purposes. Connector 1 was started with a 20mm cylinder extruded 20mm from the top plane. A plane with the 11.5 degree offset was created to create the teeth. Next, the same 6mm hole was cut into the part, followed by the hole for the spring and mating. This hole was 10mm in diameter and 8mm deep. Finally, as preparation for the teeth, 2mm were removed radially up to 5mm from the top of the part. Using the right plane, the arm part was created 30mm long and 10mm wide, extruded mid-plane to 10mm thick. This part was extended up to the surface of the joint cylinder. Another cylinder was extruded using one of the arm's faces, of the same dimensions as the first. The same steps were repeated as before, in addition to extending the arm up to the surface of this joint as well. After creating another offset reference plane, the teeth slots were cut into the parts of the same size and number as before. As in the other parts, this one was started with a 20mm wide cylinder extruded 20mm tall. As in the head joint part, a section was cut between 10 and 16mm diameters, offset 2mm from the opposing surface. The hole for the bolt was cut out through the part as well. A reference plane was created, this time in the parallel configuration. Teeth of the same size as before, 4mm wide and 3mm deep, were cut and patterned into the part up to the inner surface. Another plane was created opposite to the first to start the back panel connector. This connector was 15mm long and 10mm wide, extruded 5mm into space. The other end was extruded up to the surface of the joint. Using the surface of the connector, the back panel was sketched 25mm tall, 35mm wide, and 2mm thick, centered horizontally at the origin. The 5mm restraint here was calculated to center the back panel with respect to the entire assembly. Finally, 5mm fillets were added to strengthen this part.